By the time you're seeing this, it's my birthday. And one thing that I wanted to do before my birthday rolled around this year was I wanted to go on a proper magic mushroom trip. This might come as a surprise to some of you guys, but I am not an experienced psychonaut at all. I only started microdosing earlier this year, and prior to that I had done magic mushrooms maybe recreationally once or twice, but I'd never gone on a proper trip in which my intention was to completely surrender and be open to what the experience could teach me. Well, that all changed this past Monday when I devoted a day just to going on a trip, and I did it alone, and it was a really positive experience. I don't think it could have gone any better. In this video, I'm going to tell you what I did. I'm going to describe what being on a psychedelic trip is like, particularly a psilocybin mushroom trip, and then I'm going to share with you some of the deep insights that I learned from my trip. So if you are in the mood for having a very personal, deep, introspective conversation, then stick around for that. I started off my morning in similar fashion to any other morning. I had a light breakfast, I took my dog out for a walk, I came back, I meditated, and then I took 1 gram of psilocybin mushrooms, golden teachers to be exact. 1 gram isn't a crazy high dose, it's certainly not the 5 gram heroic dose that you read about, but I knew that 1 gram would be a good dose for me for my first trip alone. There are some places online that say that 1 gram won't give you a full psychedelic experience, but I have to remind you that I'm 5'5" and 125 pounds. 1 gram is going to hit me differently than it would somebody who's a foot taller than me and twice my weight. And I knew enough to know that 1 gram would probably be a good dose for me, and it was. The journey lasted 6 hours from the time of ingestion. Hours 1 and 2 were the coma, in which I started feeling the primary effects of the psilocybin, but it hadn't yet peaked. The peak came in 3 to 4 hours upon the time of ingestion, and it was the most intense period of the experience where I had done the most introspection, where I had gained the most vivid insights. I'm going to reserve talking about what those insights are until later on in this video. For now, let's just follow along as I try to describe to you what the trip was like for me. The come down or the afterglow came in 4 to 6 hours from the time of ingestion, and a psilocybin come down is different from other drug come downs in that you don't feel drained or like you're in any type of withdrawal at all, but rather it feels warm and fuzzy, like my senses were coming back and I was back into this place of like walking in a dream. That's the best way I would describe it. There are some people who say that the afterglow portion of a trip is their favorite part of a trip, of a psychedelic trip, and I completely understand where they're coming from. And for the most part, it was a really positive experience. I felt warm, I felt euphoric at times. There were some times in which I felt a little fearful, but I knew it was because I was facing my shadow. I was facing the parts of myself that I had repressed, or the parts of myself that carried shame. So they say that whatever you're harboring at the level of your subconscious will be raised to the level of your consciousness when you're on a mushroom trip. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go on that trip, because I wanted to see what my subconscious had been carrying, because I wanted to process it. Needless to say, being presented with thoughts about yourself that don't readily make you feel good about yourself, that isn't going to make you feel good. But once you get past it, once you accept it, once you process it, you almost always emerge from the other side feeling grateful for the experience. This is a part of the video where I want to share with you some of the insights that I learned. And these are very personal insights, and they're not necessarily even fully formed. I want to share them with you to give you a sense of how deep you can go on a psychedelic trip. These are not conversations I would normally have with anybody in my personal life, no matter how introspective they are. So it was great to be able to have these realizations from the comfort of my own room. The first insight that I got was the realization that I didn't have enough empathy for people on the cluster B personality spectrum. And that sounds very specific, but in particular, when I say cluster B, I mean narcissists. So much of my life is defined by my relationship to narcissists. This is something you probably don't know about me, but it carries more of a theme in my life than I would like to admit. One of my parents has narcissistic tendencies, and I was hurt a lot from that growing up. Then I went on to get into relationships, romantic relationships with narcissists. I even had a close friend and close confidant at one point who I later realized was somebody who was manipulating me, who wasn't honest with me, who was gaslighting me. And by the end of that friendship, I had become a shell of a human being. So I carried a lot of resentment towards people with narcissistic tendencies. And up until very, very recently, I was walking around with a no narcissist policy. This way of looking at people who have hurt you is not uncommon. In fact, one of the fastest growing communities online is the community for survivors of narcissistic abuse. This is a community that I'm part of, but something that hasn't really sat well with me is the way that even psychologists and experts in that community, the thought leaders in that space, talk about narcissists as if they are subhuman. And I think that if you're viewing your perpetrators as subhuman, you're no better than them in some ways. And then I just felt this overwhelming feeling of love. I know it sounds really cheesy, but then I had this realization that even those who hurt other people are doing it out of their own pain and suffering. And those who hurt people oftentimes do it because they don't know any better. I was able to forgive my parent when I realized that she was just doing the best that she could with the information she had. So why can't those who are on the narcissistic spectrum also deserve empathy? I hope that made sense. The second insight that I got was there's no such thing as evil. I say this as the daughter of parents who literally survived a genocide. The way we view evil is we view it as if it was a cancer of an otherwise healthy system, that the vast majority of us are good, a very small minority of us are evil, and the way we can deal with that is by excising them from our otherwise healthy system. I don't think that way of looking at the nature of evil is entirely accurate, because personally, I think that we're all capable of good and we're all capable of evil, which is why we need to coexist in a system where we can keep each other accountable. If evil was really just a feature of a very small minority, people who were born differently from the rest of us, then I don't think it could have been the case that there have been so many atrocities committed on such a mass scale over the course of world history. The third insight that I learned, this is a little TMI, maybe, but we're in a safe place here. And I told myself that I would come and be transparent in this video. 2 years ago, I had a breast augmentation for purely cosmetic reasons. I thought that it would just make me feel better about myself. You know, I had it done and then I just stopped thinking about it for the most part. But when I was tripping, I don't know if it was because I looked down or if I was just imagining things. At one point, it was as if I had x-ray vision and I looked down and I could see so clearly the silicone implants in my chest being distinctly different from the rest of me, distinctly separate from the rest of me. And I had this feeling of, I don't want this in me anymore. As I'm sitting here in front of you, I have no plans of getting my implants taken out, but the overwhelming feeling that I got was that I didn't need them in the first place. If there are any women in my audience who have also tripped and you've had a similar experience, I would love to hear from you. Insight number 4 is on the nature of shame. Shame, when it's acute, can serve a function, a positive pro-social function. If you do something, you make a mistake, it ends up hurting other people and you feel shame for it, then that feeling suggests to you that you probably shouldn't make the same mistake again. The problem is when shame starts to feel sort of inherent to your psyche. And those of us who have a lot of pain in our past, we're probably more acquainted with the feeling of shame than we would like to admit. When shame becomes a feeling that is so familiar to you, like that's what we call toxic shame. And one of the thoughts that I got while I was tripping was, what if you could see clearly when the feeling of shame arises and then you can choose whether or not to accept it. Those of us who have a lot of pain in our past, we tend to automatically embrace it because it feels natural to us. But what if before automatically identifying with the feeling of shame, we could choose, we could pause for a little bit and then ask ourselves, does this feeling make sense given the situation? And if it doesn't, what if we could reject it? What would our lives look like then? Not a fully formed thought, but it is what it is. And the last insight that I want to share with you is kind of on the nature of ego and how ego can corrupt. If we were to accept the definition of enlightenment as being on some level a state in which you are free from your ego, then my next question would be, would it be possible to be permanently enlightened? And I tend to believe that you can't be. You can't be permanently free from your ego. Even those of us who are, who start off off with the best of intentions, once we get to a certain place where we've achieved a certain level of success and the people around us stop holding us accountable, I think it becomes far too easy to start believing in our own hype, which is why you see the cliche of the megachurch pastor falling from grace, or anybody who's attained a certain level of power sort of being corrupted by that power in the end. There is a reason why that cliche exists. You know, I sit here before you at this point with 2,000 subscribers, but if it's in the cards, if one day I happen to have many more subscribers, I wouldn't want that to get to my head. Just on a conceptual level, I know that if I were to ever let it get to my head, then I would run the risk of being my own demise. There is a selfish reason for not wanting to identify with your ego, because your self-interest, your long-term interest, which also happens to be tied to the interest of other people, that is at stake. I would like to trip once every 3 months, just to keep myself accountable, just to check in on my shadow a little bit, just to release myself, if only momentarily, from the grasp that my ego might have over me at any given point. I'm going to end the video here. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. What I want to know from you is this: if you have been on a psychedelic trip, on a mushroom trip, on any other substance, you know, if you've been on a psychedelic journey and there are insights that you carry with you to this day because they were insights that were so powerful, what did you learn? What were those insights? I'd be so curious to know. Other than that, I'm going to end the video here, and I'll see you next week for my next video.